The sound of silence was the only company Dr. Elias Vorn had left. Inside the cold metal halls of Kepler's Vigil, a lonely research station orbiting a dying red star, time felt like it had stopped. The star outside was dim and cracked like an old coal, glowing weakly in the black ocean of space. Elias had been alone for 187 days. The other scientists had left long ago when the solar flares became too strong, but he stayed. He told himself it was because someone had to finish the data work, but deep down he knew it was because he had nothing waiting for him anywhere else. Each day followed the same pattern. He woke up, checked the reactor, recorded the readings of temporal activity near the star, then sat at the window and watched the faint orange light spread across the void. The computer spoke to him sometimes, short updates, mechanical words, but not the kind of voice that could make him feel less alone. That day started like every other one. He was running a calibration test on the rift detector when the sensors began to flicker. At first he thought it was a malfunction, old wiring again, maybe static from the solar wind. But the flickering didn't stop. The air itself began to shimmer, as if invisible heat waves were passing through the room. Elias frowned, adjusted his glasses, and looked up. Someone, stepped through the shimmer. A young woman appeared in the middle of his lab, surrounded by a faint blue light. Her hair floated slightly, like gravity couldn't decide if it wanted to hold her down. Her eyes glowed softly, reflecting patterns like stars seen through water. She looked human, but not quite. There was something in her movements, smooth yet uncertain, that made her seem both real and unreal at once. Elias froze. His heart skipped. The air felt heavy, his chest tight. He hadn't seen another person in months. His mind instantly searched for a logical answer. A hallucination, stress, maybe oxygen imbalance. But his training told him this was something else. The woman blinked, her voice soft and steady. "Hello, Elias," he stepped back. "How do you know my name?" She smiled faintly. "I remember you." Her tone sent a chill down his spine. There was no threat in her voice, and it was calm, almost nostalgic. But the words carried a strange weight, like a whisper from a dream he couldn't remember. Elias looked around the lab. Every sensor showed anomalies. Rising energy spikes, field distortions, the kind that only happened near temporal fractures. He glanced back at her. "You shouldn't be here. Who are you?" The woman tilted her head slightly, like she was listening to something far away. "My name is Mira. I came from a place that doesn't exist yet." Elias frowned. "That's not possible." She smiled again, but her eyes looked sad. "It's not supposed to be." For a few long moments, silence filled the lab again. The hum of machinery, the slow beat of his heart, and the sound of the dying star outside were the only reminders that the universe still existed. Elias finally spoke, voice steady but cautious. "If you came from the future, prove it." Mira stepped closer, her feet silent on the metal floor. "You keep your favorite coffee mug on the left shelf. You talk to it sometimes when you can't sleep. You once named a comet after your sister, even though you never told anyone her name was Lyra." Elias's mouth went dry. He hadn't spoken that name in years. He had deleted every record of his family after the colony ship they were on went missing. No one on the station knew. No one could have known. He swallowed hard. "How? I told you," Mira said gently. "I remember you." Elias felt a strange pressure in his chest. He didn't know whether to feel fear or comfort. The woman in front of him looked human, but her presence stirred something deeper, like a memory from a dream he'd forgotten, one that was both familiar and painful. He shook his head. "If you're really from the future, then why are you here?" Her expression changed, the soft calm in her voice now replaced by quiet urgency. "Because, Elias, you're about to destroy it." He stared at her, unable to speak. Mira gestured toward the central control panel. "The experiment you're running, the Rift Field project, it's not just collecting data. It's opening a door." Elias blinked. "That's the point. We're studying the rift signatures near the dying star. The energy helps us understand time distortions." She nodded slowly. "Yes, but your calculations, they're perfect in a way they were never meant to be. You're not just studying the distortion. You're creating one." Elias frowned. "That doesn't make sense." "I've been following the protocol exactly." Mira's voice trembled slightly, like she was fighting to stay focused. In my time, they called it the Kepler event, a ripple that spread across the galaxy, collapsing time, wiping out entire star systems before they were ever born. Humanity disappeared from history itself. Elias's mind spun. You're saying my experiment causes that? She nodded. It starts here. With you, he stepped back, shaking his head. That's impossible. The energy levels we use are too small to cause that kind of chain reaction. Her gaze softened. They were small once. But the star amplifies them. Every test you run bends time just a little more. You've been tearing open something that should never have been touched. Elias turned away, staring at the blinking lights on the control panel. It was hard to accept. Harder than anything he had faced before. He wanted to believe this was some trick, a hallucination brought on by loneliness. But the numbers on his screen told him she was right. The readings had been growing unstable these past few weeks. He turned back to her. If you're from the future, how did you even get here? Mira hesitated. I'm not sure I can explain it the way you understand time. I didn't travel through it. I remembered backward. Elias blinked. Remembered backward? She smiled faintly. In my world, time isn't a line. It's a circle that's been cracked. I followed the memory of you through the crack. He didn't understand, but her words carried a strange truth that made sense somewhere deep in his mind. It wasn't science, not in the way he knew it, but something beyond it. Why me? He asked quietly. Why come to me? Mira looked down for a moment, then met his eyes. Because in every version of the future, you're the one who tries to fix it. You always have been. The silence that followed felt alive. Elias sat down slowly, staring at the faint glow of the dying star through the viewport. His reflection looked older, worn out, a man haunted by loneliness and guilt. He sighed. You're saying I ruin the future and save it too? Mira smiled softly. Maybe both. Elias looked at her, the faint shimmer of light that surrounded her, the flicker in her outline like she wasn't fully real. For a moment he wondered if she was a ghost of something that hadn't happened yet. Are you real? He asked. She tilted her head slightly, her voice soft. Do you believe what you see? Elias didn't answer. Instead, he stood and walked toward the window, staring at the dying star again. If what you say is true, he said quietly, then we don't have much time. Mira's voice was calm but carried a hidden sadness. No, we don't. The rift is already growing. And if we don't stop it now, there won't be a future left for either of us. Elias turned back to her. The faint blue light around her had dimmed slightly. For the first time, he noticed she looked tired, like she was fading. Mira, he said carefully, what happens to you if we stop the rift? She looked down. If the future changes, I may not exist anymore. Elias felt something tighten in his chest. Then why are you helping me? She met his eyes and gave a small, warm smile. Because even if I disappear, it means humanity won't, and that's worth everything. Elias stood silently for a long moment, watching her fading light. The hum of the station grew louder, the monitors blinked warnings, and the dying star pulsed one last time like a beating heart. For the first time in months, Elias didn't feel alone. He felt human again. The next day came without sunlight, only the weak red glow of the dying star leaking through the station's metal windows. The hum of the engines filled the silence, steady and cold. Elias sat by the control console, staring at the holographic displays that floated above his desk. Mira stood beside him, watching the numbers shift and dance across the screen. The soft blue light that surrounded her flickered again. She looked weaker than before. You're fading, Elias said quietly. She nodded. The closer the rift grows, the harder it is for me to stay here. I'm connected to what's left of the future. If that connection breaks, you'll disappear, he finished for her. Mira smiled gently. Maybe, but that's not what matters right now. Elias sighed. It matters to me. For a long moment, they just looked at each other. Two lonely figures surrounded by machines and a dying star. Then Elias turned back to the controls. All right, he said. Tell me what I'm supposed to do. Mira moved to the main projector and touched the interface with her hand. Blue light spread from her fingers, forming a 3D image of the system, the station, the red star, and a swirling field of unstable energy stretching out like spiderweb cracks across space. This is the rift, she explained. Right now it's small, the size of this station, but the energy readings show it's expanding every hour. When it reaches the star's core, the collapse will begin. Elias frowned. Collapse? The star will turn into a singularity. A hole in time, not just space. It will eat everything backward and forward, past and future. Elias rubbed his temples. So how do we stop it? You built a generator to stabilize the distortion field. We can use it to reverse the process, but we need to change the polarity of the temporal current. Elias blinked. You mean reverse time flow inside the generator? Mira nodded. Exactly, he stared at her in disbelief. That's impossible. The feedback would tear the station apart. Her voice was calm. Yes, but it will also close the rift. Elias leaned back in his chair, staring at the ceiling. You're asking me to destroy everything to save everything? She looked at him with quiet sadness. You're the only one who can. He laughed bitterly. Why does it always come down to that? Because you're human, she said softly. And humans do what no machine ever could. They choose. The words hit him harder than he expected. For years, Elias had worked alongside machines, trusting logic, calculations, and rules. But standing next to Mira, someone from a future that might already be gone, he realized how much humanity had lost in their obsession with perfect systems. He looked at her again. If we change the generator's polarity, we'll need to realign the energy nodes manually. The AI can't process a time reversal protocol. I can help, Mira said. Elias raised an eyebrow. You're half made of light. Then I'll work fast before I fade, she replied, a hint of humor in her voice. He almost smiled. All right, future ghost. Let's save the galaxy. They started working. The hours passed in silence, broken only by the sound of tapping keys and the low hum of the reactors. Mira stood at one console, her hands glowing as she interfaced with the system directly. Streams of data flowed between her and the machines, a dance of light and numbers that made Elias stare in awe. You're merging with it, he said quietly. I'm guiding it, she answered. These systems were built by your people. The design survived centuries in my time. I know how they think. Elias couldn't help but feel a small spark of pride. Humanity's work, his work, had lasted that long. He watched her for a moment longer, then turned back to his terminal. The system logs showed massive fluctuations. The rift outside the station was growing faster now, swirling with red and blue energy that twisted like a living storm. The lights dimmed. The floor trembled, rift activity increasing. Elias shouted, It's feeding on the star's gravity. Mira's glow brightened as she pushed more energy into the controls. We're almost out of time. Elias typed faster, his fingers trembling. Sweat rolled down his temple. The numbers blurred together. Energy levels, time differentials, phase shifts. But he focused, his mind sharper than it had been in months. Come on, he muttered. Hold together. The system beeped. A red warning flashed across the screen. Critical structural strain detected. Mira gasped. Elias, stop. He looked up. If I stop now, it's over. She shook her head. You'll overload the core. He hesitated for a heartbeat, then slammed his hand on the confirm key. A loud explosion of light filled the room. The consoles sparked, and the station groaned like a wounded creature. The walls shimmered as gravity twisted in strange ways. Objects floated for a moment, then crashed down again. Elias was thrown to the floor. Pain shot through his shoulder as he tried to stand. Mira rushed to his side, her hands glowing faintly as she steadied him. Are you okay? She asked. He gritted his teeth. Still human, Mira smiled. Good, we need that. When the light faded, Elias looked at the main display. The rift had stopped growing. The readings were stable, for now. He let out a shaky breath. It worked. Partially, Mira frowned. Partially? The reversal field didn't activate completely. The core is damaged. We bought ourselves time, but not much. She sighed, her glow dimming again. How long? Elias checked the readings. Maybe 8 hours before the rift starts expanding again. Mira closed her eyes. Then we need to finish this. Elias looked at her carefully. You said before, if the rift closes, you'll disappear. Yes, she said simply. He shook his head. There has to be another way. Mira's eyes softened. You can't save both me and the future, Elias. One has to go. He felt a knot in his throat. You're too calm about it, she smiled sadly. I've already lived through the end once. This time I get to see someone trying to stop it. They moved through the corridors of the station, checking each energy conduit manually. Sparks flickered above their heads. The metal walls groaned as the station strained under the pressure of the unstable field. Elias tried to focus on his work, but his thoughts kept drifting to Mira. He had known her for less than a day, yet she felt like someone he had always known, someone from a half-remembered dream. "Tell me something," he said as they walked. "What was the future like?" Mira smiled faintly. "Beautiful. For a while. Humanity spread across the stars. We built worlds, cities made of light. We cured diseases, turned moons into gardens. But somewhere along the way we forgot who we were. We trusted machines more than our own hearts." Elias nodded slowly. "That sounds right. When the Kepler event happened," she continued, "time broke. People vanished before they were born. Memories disappeared. But one thing remained, the record of your name. The man who started it all and the man who tried to fix it." Elias felt a chill. "You remembered me?" She nodded. "We all did. You became a legend, the scientist who risked everything for a future he would never see." He stopped walking for a moment. "That's not a legend. That's a mistake." Mira placed a hand on his arm. "Maybe. But it's the kind of mistake only humans can make, and that's what makes it beautiful." The station trembled again. Warning lights turned red. The AI's calm voice spoke through the speakers. "Rift expansion in progress, core destabilizing." Elias and Mira ran back to the main chamber. The rift outside the window had grown again, a swirling vortex of light and darkness twisting in space, pulling debris from the dying star into its heart. Mira turned to him. "We'll have to trigger the reversal manually." Elias's eyes widened. "That means someone has to stay in the chamber." She nodded slowly. "Yes." He stared at her, realization dawning. "You're planning to do it." She didn't answer, but her silence said enough. "No," he said firmly. "I won't let you." Mira stepped closer. "Elias, I'm not even supposed to exist." "You are." He shook his head. "You came here for a reason. Maybe it wasn't just to stop the rift. Maybe it was to remind me what being human means." She smiled faintly. "Then remember it when I'm gone." Before he could argue, the rift flared again, a brighter, louder, hungrier. The walls shook. The station's alarm screamed. Mira turned toward the control chamber, her light flaring as if she had gathered all her remaining strength. Elias reached out to grab her hand, but his fingers passed right through hers, like she was made of mist. She looked back at him, her voice calm and full of warmth. "Don't give up, Elias, not yet." And then she stepped into the light. The light swallowed everything. For a few moments there was no sound, no shape, no color. Only a blinding white glow filling every corner of Kepler's vigil. The station trembled, its metal walls bending under impossible forces. Then slowly the light faded and Elias opened his eyes. He was still alive. Barely. The control room was half destroyed. Smoke filled the air. Sparks jumped from broken cables. The main power core hummed weakly, and through the cracked viewing window the red star outside flickered like a candle about to die. "Mira!" Elias shouted, coughing as he pushed himself up from the floor. No answer. He looked around desperately. The blue glow that usually surrounded her was gone. The room felt empty, colder than before. For a moment, Elias thought she was gone forever. But then he heard something, a faint whisper, soft like a sigh. "I'm here," said her voice, weak but real. Elias turned toward the generator chamber. She stood there surrounded by a faint shimmer of light, her form barely holding together. She looked more transparent now, as if the world could see right through her. "Mira!" He ran to her, stumbling over broken wires and debris. "What did you do?" She gave a small, tired smile. "I contained the expansion. The rift is stable. For now," he frowned. "For now?" "The reversal sequence isn't complete," she said. "It's holding, but not for long. You'll need to finish it." Elias stared at her glowing, half-fading body. "You can't keep doing this. You're burning yourself away." Mira shook her head slowly. "It doesn't matter. What matters is that you close the rift. If we don't, everything, Earth, humanity, all of it, will vanish." He clenched his fists. "Then tell me what to do." They walked together to the central console, though Mira's steps no longer made a sound. She floated slightly above the floor, leaving soft trails of blue light behind her. The station's systems flickered on and off as she passed, like the machines could feel her presence. Elias began working quickly, typing commands, rerouting power and adjusting the generator's output. Every few seconds the station shook, and outside the rift pulsed with strange living energy, a hole in space that twisted light and time itself. Mira pointed at the holographic display. That's the rift's center. If we reverse the temporal stream there, it will collapse in on itself. He glanced at her. And what happens to us? She hesitated. The station won't survive the feedback, but the rest of the galaxy will. Elias gave a short, humorless laugh. So this is how it ends, Mira smiled softly. Not an end, Elias, a beginning for everyone else. They worked side by side. The minutes passed slowly, each second filled with the sound of humming engines and crackling wires. Elias could feel the strain in his arms, the sweat dripping down his face, but he didn't stop. Mira's form flickered more and more, but she kept her focus, her eyes glowing faintly with determination. Finally, the system beeped. The last line of code turned green. It's ready, Elias said quietly. Once I activate the sequence, there's no going back. Mira nodded. Then this is the moment, he looked at her, his voice low. You knew this would happen, didn't you? When you came here, she didn't deny it. Yes, but I also knew that if anyone could change it, it was you. He felt a lump in his throat. You're not afraid? She smiled. I've already seen the end, Elias. This time, I get to see hope. Elias turned back to the console, his finger hovering over the control key. But something inside him refused to press it. Not yet. He looked at her again. If I start this, what happens to you? Her voice was soft. I'll disappear. My existence is tied to the broken timeline. Once the rift closes, I'll fade completely. Elias's hand trembled. Then I can't do it. Mira shook her head gently. You have to. He turned toward her, his voice breaking.
There has to be another way.
You said humans always find one. She stepped closer, her light dim but warm. You're proving that now. You're willing to sacrifice everything for someone you barely know. That's what makes you human. He looked down, unable to speak. She reached out, her transparent hand hovering just above his cheek. He couldn't feel her touch, but somehow it still warmed him. Don't let my memory hold you back, she whispered. Let it guide you. Elias closed his eyes. Then, with a deep breath, he pressed the key. The generator roared to life. The entire station shook violently. Lights exploded. The air filled with a low, deep hum that vibrated through his bones. Outside, the rift began to collapse, folding inward like a flower closing its petals. Mira gasped, her light flaring brightly for a moment. It's working, she shouted. Elias clung to the console. How long until it's done? Seconds. But then the alarms blared, a sharp, urgent sound. Core breach imminent. The main reactor was overloading. If it exploded, the rift would stabilize, but the entire station would be destroyed instantly. Elias looked at Mira. We'll both die. Mira shook her head. You still have a chance. The escape pod. If you go now, you can make it. He stared at her in disbelief. And leave you here? No, you have to, Elias. If you stay, the future dies with us. He looked at her, the faint, fading figure who had appeared like a dream and changed everything. I can't lose you again, he said quietly. She smiled, her eyes soft and full of light. You never had me to lose. I was just a memory that came to remind you what love for the future looks like. The rift outside pulsed faster, brighter. The star began to twist, its light bending into the collapsing hole. The station's hull creaked as energy waves rippled through space. Elias made his decision. He ran to the emergency pod and opened the hatch. If you think I'm leaving you behind, you're wrong, he said. Mira floated closer, her glow almost gone. You can't save me, Elias. He looked back at the console, the sequence still running. Maybe not, but I can finish this my way. He tore open a side panel and rerouted the power lines directly to the core. Sparks flew, burning his hands, but he didn't stop. He set the controls to manual override. Mira watched him, her voice barely a whisper. Elias. He turned to her, smiling weakly. You said humans choose. So I choose both, the future and you. Her eyes widened. If you do this, you'll die. He grinned faintly. Then maybe I'll see you where the timelines meet. Before she could protest, he slammed the final switch. The generator screamed. The rift outside folded in on itself, light pouring out in every direction. Time itself seemed to freeze. The red star, the debris, even the dust in the air hung still. Mira's body turned to pure light, her face peaceful. Elias, she whispered, her voice echoing like a song through the collapsing station. You did it. He stood in the middle of the chaos, the light burning around him. Tell me something, Mira, he said softly. Did we save them? Her voice came faintly, fading into the hum of collapsing time. Yes. You saved them all. And then she was gone. The last thing Elias saw was the rift closing, a perfect circle of white light folding into nothingness. Then, silence. Epilogue centuries later. A deep space exploration ship drifted near a small, quiet star. It was stable, calm, its surface unscarred. As the ship scanned the region, its sensors picked up a faint metallic signature. Captain, the navigator said, we found something. A station fragment. Old human design. They brought the fragment aboard. It was ancient, covered in dust and stardust. On one of the panels, burned into the metal, were a few lines of text written in an old Earth language. The captain brushed away the debris and read the message aloud. For every future we'll never see, humanity endures. No one on the ship knew who had written it or how it had survived for so long, but as they read the words, a strange warmth filled the room, as if the universe itself remembered, and far beyond the stars, in a place where time no longer had meaning, two lights flickered together, one golden, one blue, shining quietly in the endless dark.